From knocking out Andre to getting everyone to say "Ho!"
Ho, tough
It's the
guy.
Golden Era podcast with Sean Mooney. It feels
You
good.
think they
right?
know who we're
Spell
talking
it out.
about?
Ho!
That's all you got to hear. And you know what? And that's what you call branding. And there's nobody who branded better with all of that than Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
I know. It's amazing to say because when you go to events now, still when people are in the escalators going up, you still hear it. You still hear "Ho!"
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing that one line, and of course USA, those lines just still are in our brains. Even today, kids who maybe didn't even watch Hacksaw are still yelling "Ho!" That's amazing. But today we're talking about his career and your personal relationship with him. And I want to know, when is the first time that you met Hacksaw Jim Duggan?
Oh man. Well, it's his career, at least the initial first part of his career with the WWE, pretty much was the same time that I was there. He came in, I think, in '87. I came there in '88, and his first run went through, I think, '93. So it was kind of interesting that we kind of were there at the same time through that first period. And I just remember him just being so damn funny. I mean, he could have been a stand-up comedian. And I know that, Jim has done, where he's gone to these comedy clubs and gone up and done, an hour, done shows, and just genuinely a really comedic guy and great timing. If anybody knows about comedy, it's also all about timing. It's not so much the words that comes out of your mouth, but he just was great at it. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to note that when Hacksaw started his career in professional wrestling, and we will get into what a tremendous athlete he was before he even got there, but a very serious guy in a sense that he was known as a badass. And I'm not just saying that it was a character that, he played heels and was the tough guy, but, he legit was a, badass tough guy. And that was his style, with the ham hocks and the forearms.
the potatoes.
Yeah. And he had a reputation for being a great hand. But you think back to what he was doing then and what he eventually, became in the WWE. It really is an amazing career. And one thing it's not just true with Jim, but other wrestlers who had that same kind of background. The Bushwhackers, for example, were known as the Sheep Herders. They were this badass tag team, and they come to the WWE, and right off the bat, pretty much they were kind of turned into this comical duo. Oh, yeah. And people would ask them, does it bother you that's what they did to you in your careers? And they're like, are you kidding, mate? It was the best thing that ever happened to us. It was the, it was. It lengthened their careers and made them household names. There are certainly heels that are remembered in the wrestling history, but these baby faces who became kind of over the top characters, and it was perfect timing for Hacksaw too, because that's also when they were doing the cartoons, and we were all family friendly. And when he became the Hacksaw that we know and love today, he embraced it as well. And, the whole thing of the crossed eyes and the tongue and the thing, and it's funny to think that's why when I talk about Jim and anybody that remembers him or knows of him, they think of that goofy guy, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, loves America, the 2x4, ho! But that was not anything related to his roots in professional wrestling.
It's interesting you say all that because with so many wrestlers, you're like, oh, I remember their favorite match or their greatest storyline. With Hacksaw, you just broke it down perfectly. Like they remember the ham hocks, the USA flag, the 2x4, the tongue, the crooked eyes. That's what they remember. And what a historic career, because we remember everything about him, not his matches, not his storylines. We loved him. We didn't care what he was doing, but you brought up before how funny he was, and he would pretend to either stub his toe with his 2x4 or things of that nature. But really, when you first met him, what is he saying to you? Is he acting serious? Is he acting funny? Like, what's his demeanor?
Yeah, just always really lighthearted. He's always laughing, or making a joke, or and that's the way he always was. And you think about what these guys went through then. It was a tough life out there on the road, and Jim was very close to his family, 2 daughters, madly in love with his wife still to this day. She travels with him everywhere.
I know, I see the posts.
Yes, and Deborah and really, so it was tough for him to be away from his family, but he had a focus and knew that was his bread and butter, and was what put food on the table. But he was always, I'm sure there were bad days in there, but I mean, he was always this guy that was just up and understood the business and what you had to do. And when you look through his career, the ups and downs, and he had some tremendous highs, but also just incredible lows where you would have thought that he's done. It's not going to happen. The one that, of course, stands out to everybody was the incident with the Sheik, Sheiky, in New Jersey when they were driving together. And I'm sure we'll talk about that. But there were other lows in his career and just his perseverance. And I think you really have to go back to who he is as a person and how he grew up. His father was in law enforcement. And as people know, because it was his billing. He was from Glens Falls, New York, which is upstate, which also was something that Jim and I had in common because I was born in Rochester and Glens Falls is not too far from there. And, but his father was a police officer and became a police chief for about 25 years. And imagine living in this small town where your dad is the chief of police.
Yeah, not having any parties.
And very respected in the community. But it shaped who Jim was and is in his life. And, of course, not only the fact that he is a big proponent of law enforcement to this day, but just the respect that he has for other people and how to treat people and right and wrong, because Jim was another guy you didn't mess with. It's funny to me, too, that, he is the most amiable guy. He's so much fun to be around. You listen to his podcast now. I mean, every other second, it's one-liner. It's something that he says. It's just self-deprecating, and, he's just hilarious. But man, you do not want to mess with Jim Duggan to this day, and that's another part of it. Somebody wrongs you, you're going to pay the price, and not necessarily he's going to. And I'm sure he did have confrontations like that, but to him it was between right and wrong, and that was part of the way he was raised, and it helped him tremendously, I think, throughout his career, and gave him that perseverance to continue in a ridiculously tough industry. And as we've discussed many times, what it was like back then, just really, really tough. You had to want it more than anything. And, so Jim, and I know a lot of professional wrestlers through the years. And you mentioned our relationship when I started Primetime with Sean Mooney with the podcast. And, it was all new to me, the whole podcasting deal. And then also I hadn't really been active in, the professional wrestling industry. I'd been out of it. And I thought, I can't really, how am I going to carry a podcast? So I said, man, I got to find somebody to do it with me. And he was one of my first choices because not only was he, so great in his career, but the length of it. And I knew that he was going to be entertaining. Yeah. And it took a while because I hadn't talked to Hacksaw in decades, but I tracked him down, and eventually when he did answer the phone, because I'm sure he didn't really want anything to do with it, but I kept after him, and he agreed to do it, and we did about 20 episodes together, and I am forever grateful to him because he's the one that started it all with me, and I don't think I would have been able to do it without somebody like him. And it just got to the point, Jim, to this day, which is amazing, he's had, health issues, and the guy just keeps bouncing back. But he does, I don't know how many dates now, but back then, he was doing something sometimes 2 times a week. He was traveling all over the country. And I mentioned that, Deborah travels with him, but they would crisscross all over the place because he was still in great demand. As I said, the fact when you've got a character like that, and it's beyond just being a professional wrestler and having a gimmick. Hacksaw Jim Duggan is this figure that crosses over. And so he was doing Comic-Cons, and people know what those are. That isn't necessarily professional wrestling memorabilia, which is another industry. But he was also doing these Comic-Cons because of his character. To me, it's as identifiable as Sergeant Slaughter.
I was just going to say that.
I will say that. And so he was doing all these dates, and then I was trying to figure, we're trying to get to a point where we could get him to sit down for an hour in front of a microphone. And we weren't even doing, stuff where you could, on video.
See each other.
But it was just really difficult for him. And after about 20 episodes, just like, I can't keep doing this. And that's when I, went on and started bringing guests on. But I would have never done it if Jim didn't initially come in. And like I said, I'm forever grateful for him for doing that. And it's great to see that now he does have a podcast and still entertaining people out there every week, no matter where he is across the country. He's just just an amazing guy. He really is. I love him.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, he gave you the hunger for the podcasting. Eventually when you got there, boom, here we are in today's world. 6 years later, here we are bringing some stories from your past with Hacksaw Jim Duggan. And it's great to hear. But you brought up earlier, let's talk about his past, because he wasn't just, hey, the story of like, oh, you got a great body at the gym, come be a wrestler. Like, this dude went through the system of football, track, wrestling, New York State high school wrestling champion, Ohio State, brief stint on the Atlanta Falcons. Like, you're talking about an athlete, a collegiate athlete. And is that shocking to know that when you see Hacksaw Jim Duggan, he wasn't built, but he was a brick. Like, he was strong. But it's so strange that I don't think anyone knows his past.
Yeah. No, and he is amazing. A lot of people, and we don't talk enough really about some of the accomplishments of these guys. But Jim was a very accomplished athlete, and and you can say, oh, it's Glens Falls, New York. Well, when you're a champion in the state of New York, that's kind of a big deal.
Yes,
and he was as a wrestler there, but also a tremendous football player, and went to Southern Methodist.
I found this on the web, but also a tremendous football player.
But with his athletic background, Hacksaw Jim Duggan also has a degree in plant biology. Like, how shocking is that?
Oh, would be really shocking. Just because of the character that he plays, you wouldn't realize how smart he is, and and he's and the way he talks anyway. But yeah, a really smart guy. He's one of those people that you peel back the layers and of the onion, and you just discover all these things about him that are just incredible. And yeah, when I found that out, I was like, wow, this guy, not only is he a great performer, a great professional wrestler, and an athlete, but had the brains along with it. So just incredible.
He gets into wrestling, obviously, but Mid-South is really where he makes his name for himself in a faction called the Rat Pack. We all love Sinatra. You got Ted DiBiase, who eventually became the $1 Million Man, Matt Bourne, who'd eventually become Doink the Clown, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and Mr. Olympia. Talk about Mid-South for a minute, because it seems like so many of the stars of the WWF Golden Era came from Mid-South.
Yeah. And of course, there were other territories that these guys traveled in at the time. But you hear over and over again that it's Mid-South where they really came into their own. and people you mentioned, Ted DiBiase talks about that. Jake Roberts was down there. All of these guys passed through there, and something about that place and the atmosphere there was just rabid. The fans there, they talk about that over and over again. And I remember Hacksaw telling the story of because he loved the Junkyard Dog, and how he used to blow the roof off the arena there with the heat that these guys would generate around him. He was this beloved figure, and Hacksaw said that they could tell whether or not it was going to be a good night by how many fights they had before the matches started. They would look out in the curtain, and generating heat was just incredible. That they would have to get the heels would have to get escorts out to the ring, police escorts, and we're not talking Barney Fife guy with the nightstick. It would be like SWAT team that they would go out there, because these guys knew maybe they'd get to the ring not without real incident, but depending on the level of heat, they were going to have to literally fight their way all the way back to the curtain. And, they talk about that all the time. In my conversation with Barry Darso, he talks about a night there where, Hacksaw was in the ring, and Barry's in there, and they had the metal glove, and Barry's putting it to Hacksaw, and they knew like they could, when you've been in that situation, you feel a crowd, as they say. They said that it was just, rising and rising and rising. And Barry saying, I'm going at it with Hacksaw here. And a cop that was stationed sitting alongside the ring, picks up a chair and slides it in for Barry to use. And he said, I couldn't see it, but I could feel the crowd coming. And they went and they started beating up this cop. And everything went crazy. And he said, Jim told him, you better head back.
Yeah.
Seems more like, doing them, they're looking like, uh-oh. Because imagine, you're talking, thousands of people, at least hundreds that are willing to do battle. And you've got and that curtain couldn't be farther away. And they are literally, they said you're just punching and moving and punching and elbowing just to get your way back there. And then you get back there, you're like, oh, that was awesome.
Right, yeah.
Because why? Because the heat.
Yeah.
And that's what it was like there, that it was just a crazy place. And when you've got fans that are that into it, and as I said, you're feeling it, you really grow, because that is a lot of what professional wrestling is all about. It's not so much how you do the move. Sometimes it's like when you do the move. When you don't do the move, when you do this, because you feel the crowd. Now, those are the best guys. And, like Mick Foley has talked about this before, that when he started, he had no clue. It's like one of those things, I don't know, whatever you're mastering, let's say it's a guitar or whatever it is, and you're a complete idiot. You're just playing, and it's not making sense. And then all of a sudden, oh, that's how you do this. And that's where, and when you've got that that emotion that's pouring in and out of that ring, you learn a lot. If you're also going to find out if you're just not made for this business, if you can't recognize it at some point. And Jim talks about those days fondly, and so do many of the others, because it was such a great place to develop. They were allowed to with these characters. And then, Ted DiBiase talks about when he was at Midsouth, he was never this gimmick. He was Ted DiBiase.
Right.
But his training there and what he learned and how to the psychology in the ring, when he came up to Connecticut to meet with Vince McMahon, he was ready to take on that role, that gimmick that solidified his career. Yeah. So Hacksaw was the same way. Hacksaw was just this tough guy, really, literally, when he came to the WWE, and in some ways, that incident that happened with the Sheik, which was awful. Jim thought that was the end of his career. Really, was a blessing in a way, because he was removed from that whole atmosphere. And then when he came back, he became really the Hacksaw that we know and love, and was over as a huge baby face, and he never looked back. And he discusses that many times, that that's becoming Hacksaw Jim Duggan that we know, really gave him a career for life, which he's still, very much part of. He's still going. It's really amazing. Somewhere. He doesn't have to go into the ring, but everybody loves Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
This is true. Everyone still loves him today. I think you said one of the most recognizable wrestlers still to this day. Mm-hmm. The Hacksaw name, that happens in Mid-South. He's having a rivalry with Bush Reed over this nickname. Hacksaw ends up winning it, but he's also a heel, but he eventually turns babyface. And this is where he introduces the most famous accessory, I think, in professional wrestling, the 2x4. That 2x4 in wrestling, you always think of foreign objects, like, a cane, salt in the eyes, but he's got a 2x4. And we don't mind as fans when he hits a bad guy in the face or the back with it. But talk about that, because it is a pairing, like Undertaker and Paul Bear, like Hacksaw and that 2x4 are a pair, like Frankie or Damien. Take me through that process, because sometimes an accessory is used for a bad guy, but people loved that 2x4. Still love it today.
Yeah. Well, you can, in a sense, call him the king of gimmicks, as we know.
He only has two hands. You know what I mean?
Part of it. But yeah, and I was just thinking too, and I always thought about this when you think about these names, that why would you call somebody Hacksaw? I mean, think of, what is a hacksaw? It's this little blade that you use to cut through metal, or so. Wouldn't you think that if you're going to be a saw, you'd want to be like a buzz saw or something like that? But Hacksaw, well, that just sounds good. Okay.
Great nickname.
And then a piece of wood. How would you think that's going to become this trademark gimmick, in a sense? That a 2x4. Okay, but like we talked about, when a gimmick, you can't really explain them sometimes, and it's the individual that ends up making it work. And so he's. Can you think of any other nickname that you would put with Jim Duggan? No, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, man, that just flows. And then with the 2x4, what else are you going to give him, right? It just goes with the 2x4. Now, kind of a bummer. I mean, he talks about early on that he would be traveling around with a 2x4. He had like a case for it.
I was just going to ask you about that, but all right.
It was this special piece of wood? No, but he had to carry it around. It was his gimmick thing. And then he figured out, well, wait a minute. We have these trucks that are going. I mean, he said there were times, like in the early on, before I get to that, but he said there were times early on he'd go to an arena and he didn't have a 2x4. For whatever reason, couldn't get it through TSA or whatever it was, whatever. And he'd go to these arenas and be looking in the back of the place, there's got to be a piece of wood somewhere. So he would find a piece of wood, a 2x4, whatever it turned out to be, and how he would use it. But he said, and then he would be traveling around with this thing, like put it in the overhead or something. And he finally realized, he said, well, we have trucks that go to all the arenas. So he would keep, when he's on the road, he was a different story, but he would keep the 2x4s in one of the trucks. So he always had these backups that, when they would go to the TVs. But he said it just took him a while to figure that out. But it was something that became as much a part of him. Like if he went out to the ring without it, people would be going like, what? And how many thousands of times would he do the gimmick where he's got the board over his shoulder and there would be somebody standing next to him and he'd do this, they'd tap the duck, and he would be totally oblivious,
Or the gun, he would use it as a gun. He'd point it.
Oh yeah. And remember we're talking about, having flipping the pencil. I told you what I would do when I would be sitting at the event center desk and the the boss man with the nightstick, being able to use that thing like it was a nunchuck. Well, that's the way it was with Jim too, with that 2x4, because he, had it in his hands so much that he got those boredom things, so he could flip that thing way up in the air and then catch it in the ring. And also, as we talked about with Boss Man, abusing that when you have to use that as a weapon, you got to know how to pull it. You got to know how to use it, because you can really hurt somebody. And what it would take something like maybe say to knock somebody out like Andre the Giant. You got to know how to use it. And Jim certainly did. And you can go back and look at a lot of those shots that he would do with the board, because a lot of people ended up on the end of it. But he absolutely knew what he was doing when he would do those headshots and laying it across somebody's back. You got to know what you're doing, because Jim talks about it all the time, about taking care of the other guys. And he was always kind of amazed how you'd get these guys that worked snug, as he would say. And he didn't see the purpose of it. Like, what are you doing? That's not what this business is about. If you're good, you don't hurt anybody.
Yes.
You go out there and but there's nobody who knows the difference. So you just shows what a great athlete that he is. And then also the fact that he was really good at what he did with his profession. You had to be an expert at being able to do things like that. It's the same as throwing a punch and being centimeters away from somebody's face. And that just came from, years and years of doing it. But he doesn't get credit because he was pretty much known as a brawler. But Jim could do it all. He had to learn how to be a wrestler, because he was going to go in the ring against guys that were often known as tacticians. So you had to know how to do what they did, so that you could make them look good in there. And when you're on the receiving end, if you're a lunk, you can't work with these guys. So he doesn't get credit, I don't think, that way, that just how, he could be very agile in there.
Well, especially because with him, I thought less was more. Sometimes people are like, well, I got to do this flip and I got to do this move. And there's a lot of arguments in today's world about wrestling. But with Hacksaw, again, simple, nothing too crazy. And it all worked because we believed in the character. We believed in him and his 2x4 in America and being a patriot. Not, is he going to do a 450 splash tonight? Like, we weren't looking for that out of Hacksaw. We were looking for him to be our hero. And, again, that 2x4 story, I love it, because I was going to ask you, though, about that, because we've heard stories about Damien. There was multiple Damiens. There wasn't one Damien. Yeah. I was wondering, is there like a mystical 2x4 that he carried around for 35 years and it's in his house on a mantle? But you're telling me that he would just buy a new one constantly.
Oh, yeah. He had, wood across the United States, wherever else he traveled.
That sounds like a video you'd... That sounds like a dirty video, Mr. Mooney.
No. We're not going there.
All right, we're not going there. But still, how many splinters do you think he got as well? Because is he sitting there making it smooth?
Well, I think if he had time to do that, but I can't imagine that Jim was back there with a sandpaper before he goes out, getting this thing. So and when he did pick up a 2x4 to use, he probably didn't have a lot of time. So yeah, he did. I'm sure he got splinters along the way, but that was just part of the deal that came with the gimmick that was working tremendously well and still does.
Yeah, that's true. He did have a few moments here in New Japan, but in 1987, as you mentioned, he shows up in the WWE. And at that time, you have characters like Nikolai Volkov, Russian, your Iron Sheik. Yeah. You have a lot of foreign characters, and you have Hacksaw coming down wearing his jeans and like his muscle shirt and his 2x4, his bandana on his head. He was, in my eyes, like Mr. America. Like, do you feel like when he came in immediately, everyone loved him because it's like, wait, you're fighting these dirty foreigners and you love America? Yeah.
And he was kind of this blue collar, guy that would, if you got in trouble in a bar, you want him standing next to you.
Oh, yes.
Just and believes in America, and just that hard working guy. And I think that was a lot of his appeal. And the fact that he was funny too. People loved him for that. The kids loved him. So, it was a perfect character for him. And I don't think people ever question, sometimes when you got this badass guy and somebody's like, we're going to make him a baby face. And you're like, that'll never happen. But people knew the other side of Jim and knew that he could certainly pull it off. And he embraced it. I mean, I think he's loved being that, which I think is a lot of who he is too, that he puts into that. So I don't think it was a big transition for him to, become Hacksaw Jim Duggan. And he was pretty much a natural at it. So, it just came with the way he went through the WWF, and people loved him. It didn't take long for him to get over, and I think that surprised them initially, but I wasn't surprised at all.
No. But you brought it up earlier too, is like the derailment though of his character in '87. He shows up WrestleMania 3. He interrupts the Russian national anthem. Mm-hmm. Again, WrestleMania 3, 83,000 people are going crazy for this. Like you can hear the buzzing. Like there's not everyone's gonna sit down moment. Like you could hear this loud noise, and it's just 83,000 fans going crazy for Hacksaw. But you mentioned he does get in trouble with the Iron Sheik driving around. Drugs are in the car and they get arrested. And there's two angles to this, because one is, wait, a good guy is driving around with a bad guy, but also we're trying to become family friendly. We're trying to become this new business. We're 3 years into it, and we can't allow this type of stuff to be out there, out in the open. So you weren't in the company yet, but when you hear about this, was it so hard to understand that a good guy and a bad guy are actually not who they are on television, traveling together? But drugs and wrestling, it unfortunately is a common thing around this time. So was anyone really shocked?
Well, I think, and had discussions with Jim about this. He talked about it in the podcast, that it was, well, I mean, to say just stupidity, like not really thinking it through. This was a time when kayfabe was, pretty strong still, yeah, in the business, and literally, guys were not supposed to travel with each other. They didn't stay in the same hotels. If you ran into each other at a bar, you had to sell it, and so Jim, I'm sure, looks back and goes, yeah, that was not one of the greatest decisions that I ever made in my life. The drug use, as far as, back then, on the outside and in the culture, it was, say no to drugs. And, the whole thing was still kind of very strong, that type of branding messaging out there. And so the WWE, and of course, as we mentioned, was supposed to be this family friendly organization, we embracing the kids, and so they knew what was happening out there, but at the same time, as long as you don't get in trouble and you're the drug testing and you know what you're doing, okay. And I'm sure there were many exceptions, but smoking pot was not a lot of everybody did it, that right. was yes, kind of then. And that was, what Jim did. He was smart enough not to do the, cocaine, and he knew how serious that was. And he's not going to search Sheik's, luggage before he gets in the car and thinking, Sheik had this reputation. He, like I said, he looks back and goes, yeah, that was not the greatest idea. Because Sheik was a madman. He was, you didn't know what he was going to do, and so was anybody within the WWE surprised that the Sheik was caught with this stuff? No, but it just was an awful look to be pulled over and have everything you just mentioned. It was just all bad. Just the fact that here the two of them are together, that had to piss Vince off. And then you get, marijuana in the car and then the cocaine that the Sheiky had.
Yeah.
And just, and Jim talks about that. It was, I don't know, Sheik's ride fell through. He was, they weren't set up to go ride together, but he was kind of stuck. And Jim's like, and Sheik says, "Hey, Hacksaw, can you give me a ride?" And Jim's like, "Yeah, okay." They weren't going far.
Yeah. And
he talks about it that when they got hauled in, but he got out and he had a show, I think, that night. And he says it's so funny that he thought, well, maybe this will blow over. And, the next morning, we didn't have cell phones then, but he gets a message, and I think from Deborah or whatever, saying, they're trying to find you or whatever. But however it went down, wasn't good, and he knew it. And he paid a big price. But as I said, in some ways, it kind of turned out to be a blessing because it was a reset for him. It was unfortunate because, at the time, Jim was climbing up the ranks. He was taking on a lot of these headliners, that were at the top of the lists at the WWE, with Hulk and all of them. I mean, he was in the mix. So as far as that went and his trajectory, that was a big blow. But I think in the long run, as I said, when he came back, that's when he really took off as Hacksaw Jim Duggan. The fans loved him and they embraced him and have never stopped that hug with Jim.
Yeah, Hacksaw Jim Duggan and the Iron Sheik are both released by the WWF. They wrestled that day too, though. So it's like they get arrested, they get out, they come out, they wrestle each other, then they get fired. Yeah. That's unfortunate. Hacksaw Jim Duggan actually said this in an interview. I was rehired, but I never regained the momentum I would have had before the arrest. I think it was on the fast track. I think I would have been world champion, intercontinental champion, or tag team champion. And, that's unfortunate. But when he does get rehired, honestly, it's not like any missteps. He wins the first ever on television Royal Rumble in 1988. So clearly Vince was like, well, I have to punish you because I can't just let this happen. And then everyone else will do the same thing you're doing. But we're going to let this blow over, bring you back. And then even Iron Sheik got brought back. So it wasn't like that big of a deal, I guess. Yeah. But Hacksaw Jim Duggan wins the first Royal Rumble, and that's one of those facts every year. And they do Royal Rumble facts, like who was the first winner? Hacksaw. You spoke to him. How important was this for him? Because again, this could have been the end of his wrestling career, but it really starts a whole new process in his life.
Yeah, and I think he was surprised that, and I all of us were, to think that you would have thought they would ease him back in to see how how the fans react to him. But I really think that when it all came down to it and everything came out, because it did, it's, you got to think back at that time. Like you said, they went and wrestled that night. They got out and then they went and worked. And Jim's thinking, well, nobody really said anything. But we didn't have the internet the way it is now. We didn't have cell phones. They couldn't have called like, what the hell's going on? So you found out in a hurry, like how things worked back then. And, but it didn't stop it. It just slowed down the progress of that getting all out. But, but to get that push, when he came back and I said, I think that when everything really came out, I think they realized, that in a sense of it, that Jim was really innocent of doing anything that, wrong. He wasn't carrying a bale of marijuana in the trunk. It was whatever it was a small amount, and that he was basically trying to help out one of the boys. Yeah. When it came down to it, and I think they liked his his work ethic, and they understood even then the kind of crowd reaction that he could stir out there. So I think it was a way of saying, hey, we're behind you. And it was great to see. and everybody felt that way. So it was, as he talks about, he could have been a champion. He never was. He did get a couple of belts along the way, but he would never get that serious push of being at the top of the card. But in the long run, I think it worked out much better for him. And I think that when it all was said and done, you always want to be a champion. You always want to have that cap. But as far as an entire career and the way everything unfolded in his life, I don't think he has many regrets. Although it's funny because he says, page 3 of my regrets, But really, overall, the kind of life that professional wrestling has provided him, and the blessings he's had, and I think that when he added it all up, I think he'd say, yeah, it's been a pretty good ride.
Well, yeah, he wins the first Royal Rumble, heads to WrestleMania 4 in the world title tournament. The winner becomes world champion. Macho Man pulls that off. Hacksaw fights $1 Million Man. They have history, but Andre interferes in this match, which sets up a Hacksaw Andre storyline throughout the year. And there's a moment where Andre and Hacksaw are face to face in the ring. And of course, Andre's giant, so he starts choking out Hacksaw. He's bleeding, but he has his 2x4 and he hits Andre in the face. I watched this last night. He hits him in the head, so he knocks him out unconscious. He falls down. But remember, Andre's been choking him with the strap of his singlet. So it's wrapped around Hacksaw's neck. Andre falls while he's still attached to Hacksaw. They both go down, and I'm watching him like, dude, Hacksaw's probably really being choked right now, and he's trying to get out.
Yeah.
But it's a great moment because, again, how many people are beating up Andre the Giant around this time? Only Hulk Hogan and maybe Macho Man.
Yeah, and it shows you. So, I mean, right there, it shows you the confidence they had in him and what they were willing to do. And another thing you have to remember here, too, Andre's not going to put you over like that unless he likes you. Mm-hmm. And he liked Jim, and Jim worked with him many times. And Jim has tremendous respect for Andre the Giant, and but he also knew how careful he had to be in there. Mm-hmm. That you don't want to light up Andre the Giant with your 2x4. He pulled it up when he lays that in. It looks good.
It does look good.
But he talks about that, with Andre would do that with the singlet and stuff. And also the fact that many instances we've documented of Andre being, shall we say, heavy handed, but how could he not be? He's 500 pounds basically with these gigantic, these ham hocks where, and you see, when he would just, slap you. You imagine that's like getting hit with a 2x4. So when you're working with him, and Andre was still moving around, but he was not at his physical peak by any stretch of the imagination. And Jim would talk about, you had to be careful because, especially if Andre was going to go down, you didn't want to be under there because when he fell, that could be career ending. So. All the way around, the WWE was pushing Jim, giving him that opportunity. And then Andre saying, yeah, well, we'll do this. And, a great match. It was certainly tremendously entertaining, to watch that. But I watched the same thing. And when he goes down, it just like dragged across.
He dragged him.
And he's like, I really am getting choked. It's one of the classic matches. I'm sure that is among his top 10 of stepping into the ring with another opponent with Andre.
Yeah, well, it's so funny because this YouTube video I found of the storyline of Hacksaw and Andre, it starts off with you first in the event center talking. Now you're just in the room with all the monitors, but you're talking about. Hacksaw lost
just the room with all the monitors. You're talking about the Sacred Event Center, sir.
I'm so sorry, sir. It's a green screen, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess we have revealed that, haven't we?
You did one time when you told me that. I was like, wait. I was like, what are you talking about?
I shattered it. Didn't
like
I?
that ruined my childhood. You crushed my whole entire childhood that day. But yes, no, in the event center, the iconic, most famous place that is a green screen. I didn't know until you broke my heart that day. You start the video off and it's like a 16-minute video of just highlights of Hacksaw and Andre. And if anyone wants to check it out, like it's amazing to see where the audience is. Like you can't even hear Hacksaw on the microphone because the crowd is going so crazy seeing Hacksaw in the face, I guess the chest of Andre the Giant. It's monumental. And again, like I said, who's working with Andre? You're not allowed to unless he wants to work with you. And,
exactly.
And here he is working with him. But this is where we get into full force patriotic after Andre, because we're fighting Boris Zukov, we're fighting Dino Bravo, the French Canadian, we're fighting even Bad News Brown, WrestleMania 5, no contest match. But we get King Hacksaw Jim Duggan. He defeats Haku in a match and becomes the new king of the WWF. Talk about the king of accessories. We got an American flag, we got a 2x4, and now we have a crown and a robe. Did he love this? Because it was hilarious.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He give me the more the better. He just loved it and pulled it off, because that's what he did. He give him anything, and Hacksaw is going to make it work. And the fact that he had all that going out with the flag and I think back, that some people were saying, how do you have someone, especially like when Sergeant Slaughter was there, Sergeant Slaughter is supposed to be the all-America, love the country, that whole thing. How do you have somebody like Hacksaw Jim Duggan do that? Well, Hacksaw was kind of the common man.
Yes.
And who loved his country. Sergeant Slaughter was kind of like on the military side of it, the protecting the country, that was why I think that worked so well with him. And there was no really ever any conflict or, well, who is the one that gets to carry the American flag? Because they were two completely different characters. And so, with Hacksaw, that he was able to do that is pretty amazing. And, when he would go into these matches with all of the stuff, but he did it, you'd love seeing him coming out there with the American flag. You bought that. He and he's king too. Okay. How none of this makes sense, but Hacksaw could pull it off. The bitch of it is that he's got to carry all this shit around. You got, it's the extra suitcase now.
Dude,
but
extra.
But overall, I think, Jim loved it. He just, because every one of those things he's wearing, it means he's over more. These guys that they've got him doing all this stuff. He was busy. It was great.
He was busy, but this moment though, it's Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Demolition against Andre and the Twin Towers at SummerSlam. Now talk about accessories. We got a 2x4, American flag, a crown. We have the robe. We also have now a Demolition mask on his face. Underneath that is face paint.
Face paint. Yeah.
There's an action figure up there. So if you guys want to have accessories, it's like buying a Barbie for a girl. It comes with like a pocketbook and a dress and shoes. This Hacksaw Jim Duggan is that for men. So it's incredible to see that moment, because I think a lot of people remember they all reveal, they take their masks off together, look at the camera, and there's Hacksaw with the United States flag on his face.
and I could just imagine back there that he thought it was hilarious that he had all this, that there was like a carrying of trunk of gimmicks. But, and people were laughing their ass off because, what else are you going to, what else could he do?
What else could he wear? I guess on his feet, he could wear something like give him some fancy shoes.
Give him, or give him an animal. I don't know, maybe an old, hound dog or something. Or
a bald eagle.
Yeah. Imagine that. Trying to, I think
we got Frankie.
Was stuff with Frankie. Yeah. Well, imagine an eagle. I gotta go out and got to find a rabbit for this thing, so it can swoop down and kill it.
Can you imagine that? Like this Vince's office, you got like Damien on the ground, you got Frankie, you got Matilda, you got a bald eagle. It's like you got the sewer rats of Bad News Brown. Like,
we know those dangerous sewer rats.
They look like possums to me, though. Hacksaw, though, loses the crown eventually to Macho Man, and Macho Man recently lost the world title.
Oh, yeah.
But he becomes a Macho King, and I don't think a lot of people know that. Like, just this like gives Macho Man a whole new year and a half of a gimmick by just beating Hacksaw for his crown. Like you were close with Savage. Like, was it strange for Savage to take this King gimmick and Hacksaw, who's making it a bit of a comedy, Macho Man makes it the most serious thing possible. Like, he is the king of the WWF. He made that legit.
And I think Randy loved it. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a king? First of all, in the WWE, but I don't think initially they thought, oh yeah, it's going to, keep this going for a year or something like that. I think we'll see how it goes in maybe a month or two, and then we give it to somebody else we need to push. But Randy, man, he just embraced that.
Yeah.
And then of course Sherry helped out to put that over as well. But Macho King was like, how cool is that? I mean, still to me, I think that in many ways I think of him as the Macho King, and because he put that over so well. But that just shows you another side of Randy that we've talked about before, his ability to sell whatever it was that he was doing, and understood accessories. I mean, look at the outfits that the guy would wear, and as I've said, that he knew that that he was going to do whatever he needed to do to put him over, and if that meant having 3 different outfits in one night, he was going to do it. So every time you're given something like that, it just, bottom line there is they're putting you over. They're going to make you the Macho King, or you're going to make you the king, and I'm sure he came up with Macho King. You're going to sell it, and it kept building. I mean, people really loved it, and it shows because he was able to ride it for as long as he did, because as we know, if it ain't working, it goes away. So that was one of the things. Now with Jim, it was, he didn't need it. He didn't need a crown.
No.
But give him that opportunity to have some fun out there and have some new gimmick added. He's all in. But I don't think anybody thought he was going to be Hacksaw King Hacksaw for any length of time. It wasn't. Yeah, he didn't need it.
No. But what we did need was his USA patriotic ways, because Sergeant Slaughter turned on America, Iraqi sympathizer. Well, that gimmick's over. How do you fix what you've done? Well, you hook Hacksaw up with Sergeant Slaughter, forming a group, a tag team. And honestly, that's all it took for, I think, everyone to go, oh, if Hacksaw forgives Sergeant Slaughter, who loves America, then we also can do that. Isn't that amazing? We talked about Hulk Hogan's like magic. If you were with Hogan, you suddenly were looked at differently. Hacksaw has that same thing to fix what happened to Sergeant Slaughter over the past year and a half. Like, take me through that. Like, that's some strong star power.
Well, it wasn't as though that identity for Hacksaw was something new. He had been, the true blue American for a long time. Mm-hmm. And as we just discussed, that if there was any conflict between those characters and who is it that really represents America in the WWE, it wasn't, you got to be a Sergeant Slaughter fan or a Hacksaw fan. As I said, that, Hacksaw was that blue collar, hardworking guy who loved America and would fight to the death to defend it. And so it wasn't something new. It wasn't suddenly that he was this patriot. Everybody knew he was this patriot. So if he's going to come and say, got the eye lifted up and to Sergeant Slaughter, and like, you really, you love
America?
You love America, and prove it. He's got to prove it to me.
Of course.
But when he came through, then you know what, folks? Oh,
he's
and
okay.
It's like, boom, okay, Sergeant's back. Sergeant Slaughter's back. And so that showed his power as far as being persuasive and moving the needle within the WWE as far as becoming a fan favorite. That was a classic example of it, and them being able to do it, and it was a natural thing. If somebody was going to go after Sergeant Slaughter when he turned, of course, why wouldn't it? Of course, it would be Hacksaw. Hacksaw would be the one that would call him on it and be willing to fight him. So, and he was also the guy that could forgive him and bring him back into the fold and think, nice to have you back as a Patriot,
It's true. But, around this
it
time,
would have been harder too. I think it would have been harder without Hacksaw to make that turn back. You needed somebody there that everybody trusted and believed. And if he says, well, if he says he's okay, he's good. He's good with me.
Well, because he started doing these Sergeant Slaughter vignettes, I remember, and he was like, I want my country back. And he would be in front of, monuments and famous land, like Mount Rushmore, whatever. Yeah. He'd be talking about how he wants his country back. It's like, well, you just turned on us, buddy, for like a long time. And now, but Hacksaw's there. He's like, he's okay with me. Yeah. Oh, well, shit. Stop filming these vignettes then. We're okay. We're fine. Yeah. But Hacksaw Jim Duggan, as you brought up, never world champion, never intercontinental champion, always opportunities against champions like Rick Rude or Honky Tonk Man, even Shawn Michaels later on. But he kind of, I don't know where he loses star power, but the golden era of wrestling starts to slip out around the end of 91 and 92, where Hacksaw no longer is presented as this huge star. He's still wrestling. He's on WrestleManias and random events, but he's no longer in the fold of every event like he was for the past 3 or 4 years. Is that just a transitional thing into, all right, we got to make new stars, we can't depend on this anymore, and we got to just kind of push you out to bring people in?
Yeah, that was exactly it. And remember, this was when the youth movement, when those old guys are getting near 40, got to move on. That was a big part of it. But at the same time, as strong as that character of Hacksaw Jim Duggan was at the time, but everyone has their run. You can only do so much with them after a while, and that was the beauty of the territories. That when you had a run start to fizzle. The guy left the territory, went to another one, and might come back a year or two later and welcomed with open arms and could have a whole new gimmick or just pick up with new heats or some storyline. Well, you didn't have that luxury in the WWE. That was one of the the tough things about it, is that where else were you going to go? We didn't, guys might go away because they need a rest, and you bring them back for a month or two or something. But that's why those guys worked their ass off, because you would do whatever dates they wanted you to do. If they wanted you working 7 days a week, and then 4 shows over the weekend, you're in, because you don't know how long it's going to last. And where do you go from there? You can go other places, but you're not going to make the same amount of money. You're not going to get the same recognition. You might have to go to Japan. These other territories were doing okay, and but there weren't a lot of options at that time to stay at that level. But everything had its run, and that was the case with Jim. And it didn't help that Vince was also trying to do this youth movement, and Hacksaw wasn't the only one who was, whose star was fading as far as the WWF was concerned.
Right. Like, I want to make sure that everyone knows I love Hacksaw Jim Duggan, but like clearly positioned on television, they weren't going to keep putting him in high profile spots anymore. Yeah. And so, he has matches at WrestleMania 8 and things like that. But the last big thing I remembered, and still I think a lot of people remember, is you're no longer in the WWF, but Hacksaw has this huge match against Yokozuna, who's now the world champion. It's USA versus Japan, and Hacksaw knocks down Yoko, and the crowd goes crazy. It's a world title match, and eventually Yokozuna bonsai drops Hacksaw a bunch of times, making him bleed from his mouth, made his whole stretcher job. He's out. He comes back. He loses to Bam Bam Bigelow at King of the Ring 93. He's out. Yeah. Then he goes to WCW, and it's the end of his WWF career. And it was great to see him in the world title match. And honestly, at that point, when I was watching, I thought, he's going to do it. Like, if anyone can beat this evil wrestler like Yokozuna, Hacksaw's going to become world champion. But his jump to WCW, were you surprised by this? Because it seemed like everybody else left too. IRS, $1 Million Man, Hogan, Macho Man. It seemed like the door was just open and they're all going to go.
Yeah, well, and Jim has talked about it where you know what's going on. You've been in the business long enough. You're starting to, if you're doing jobs, that, and one after another, okay, there's the message, the door, I can see it. And, and back then that's where you went because they were paying really good money, giving guaranteed contracts. You weren't going to have to do anywhere near the number of dates that you were doing. So yeah, that's, of course, what can you fault any of them for doing that at that time? It was unheard of in the industry to do that. And like I said, not just the fact that you've got guaranteed money, but it's guaranteed good money. Mm-hmm. And you got to go to some tapings and do a few house shows, but not anywhere near what the WWE was demanding of you then. So no, it was no surprise, and I was glad that that he was able to do something like that and not have to go over to Japan, even though that could be lucrative. But think about it, it's Japan. You're going to the other side of the world. I know a lot of guys did enjoy it, but at the same time, it was a grind, to leave your family for that long. You weren't coming home usually after 2 weeks or something. You're going to be over there for a while. And it's a lot stiffer over there, so your body's going to take a bigger toll. But, so guys making that move, Jim doing that, I was happy for him.
Yeah. Again, I think people forget, the wrestling business, it's a business. Yeah. And if you can get paid more money to work less dates, why wouldn't he do that?
And be guaranteed?
Yeah. Yes.
If any people who are, historians out there, they know what these guys made in the early days. I mean, sick poverty money.
Yeah.
Where, the stories of basically it was costing them to do the jobs, to wrestle. Mm-hmm. So when you're at a point now where, you got guys that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars, some of the biggest are making, well over $1 million. The industry is definitely changing, but to be in a situation like that, hell yeah, you're taking it, and you're gonna, no matter how bad it is or whatever you've got to do. That's where the opportunity was, and a lot of them went, and we know what happened during that period of time.
Yeah, we grow the Monday Night Wars from this kind of crossover because Hacksaw Jim Duggan he's not Stone Cold Steve Austin yet, but he is stunning Steve Austin for the United States Championship in 34 seconds. This would start Steve Austin's anger towards WCW. Eventually he's laid off there, and we all know what happened with Stone Cold. But Hacksaw Jim Duggan, from this point on, he's having rivalries with Ming and Vader and Barbarian, Kamala, DDP. But Hacksaw Jim Duggan, when we get to like 1999 and 98, he's no longer this historical, lovely, patriotic character. Like at one point, he's a janitor. He's backstage mopping the floor on television. He finds the TV championship in the trash and crowns himself champion. Like this was not the Hacksaw Jim Duggan I loved, and I felt bad for him. And then eventually, even denouncing his love for America, joining up with Lance Storm's Canadian faction, shaving his beard, becoming this new character. Like, to me, it ruined a piece of my love for Hacksaw. Of course, I don't care anymore, but then I was like, what are they doing?
Yeah. What is he doing? Yeah. And that's, as we talked at the top of this discussion, the highs and the lows. And that was certainly one of the lows. But I'm sure if you had a discussion with, you talk to Hacksaw, he'll tell you, that all was necessary in his life to go through, because unless you're reminded of really where you come from and how things can turn, and it's always the old adage, it's not how you act when you're on top and how you treat people when you're on top. It's when you get knocked on your ass. And this is like a lesson I've always drilled into my son, that there's going to be great successes in your life, but don't think you're going to be unscathed. At some point, you're going to get knocked on your ass. And what are you going to do? that's when you're going to be really tested. That's when we're going to find out who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim is one of those individuals that that happened to many people, but he's one of those individuals that, he got knocked on his ass a bunch of times. What did he do? He got back up, dusted himself off, and figured out, okay, what do I do next? How do I keep going? And this also around the time, I think that this is when he had health issues. He had kidney cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So you think about it, it wasn't just professional setbacks. I mean, health setbacks, and time and time again, that wasn't the last. That he fought on, and would come back and find success again. So it just shows you the character and the drive of that guy. That no matter what you threw at him, he was going to find a way through it.
True. And with all this going on with the storylines, it's in today's world, he's still traveling every weekend, and it's not, no one's going like, hey, I love that Canada thing. They're not talking about that. That was one little blip on your chapter of life here on Earth.
Janitor, exactly.
A little piece. They're going to be talking about, remember that time you knocked out Andre, or remember that time you said ho 1,000 million times, or the United States flag. Like, no one's bringing this up constantly. It's more of just like WCW was weird in 1999 and 2000. They have Viagra on a pole match. They have Buff Bagwell's mother on a forklift. Like, there's a lot of, what are we doing? But
look back and then. I mean, you talk the horrors of booking. You're like, what in the? The list goes on and on. That it smelled of desperation and much other bad things. What in the world? But that's when everything really turned, and it was necessary to happen in the business. I'm glad that was a period of professional wrestling, because look how it changed the industry forever.
Oh yeah. Oh no. Yeah. I that's why when I get mad, even now, like if I don't watch all the companies, someone's like, well, you're a supporter of that. Like, no, I support wrestling, but I only have time for so much in my life. So I choose what reminds me of nostalgia, childhood, fond memories. I'm not interested in trying something new right now. Some people are. Hacksaw Jim Duggan jumping over to WCW gave him a second run, because those fans who were watching WCW maybe were loyal to WCW. They weren't watching WWF or they were sick of it. So him showing back up, fighting Vader and Steve Austin, it gave us a whole new run of Hacksaw Jim Duggan, because he reminded us of our childhood and nostalgia. And he does return to the WWE. He has a run from 2005 to 2009. He's in and out of the company, even wins the tag team titles. Like, he has a whole nother generation of wrestling fans to love. And when the Royal Rumble happens, we hear his music and he comes out. He's sometimes a surprise entrant, and the crowd doesn't go, who? Yeah. They go, oh, it's Hacksaw! Yeah. No one forgets him.
No, ever. And they won't. And it isn't just in arenas. He'll walk through an airport. You'll hear somebody's going to say, ho! It's just, it goes with him. And tough guy, he's among the greatest branded wrestlers in professional wrestling. No question about it.
Yes, I made a mistake. He didn't win the tag team titles. He won 2 Slammy Awards. I'm sorry, folks. So don't yell at me.
You'll get something.
It was Roddy Piper and Ric Flair who randomly won the tag team titles together later on in the weird 2000s of Monday Night Raw. So please don't send your hate mail to me. But he is a former TV champion, fighting in the trash. He's the final champion there, U.S. champion, Royal Rumble winner, Hall of Fame in 2011. But I think it's funny that he did win Slammy Awards for Best Vocal Performance and Greatest Hit when he sang in 1987 on the WWF album. But yeah, Hall of Fame, that is something that some people are harping on about Hall of Fame, or they love it or they hate it. But if you love it, Hacksaw Jim Duggan deserves to be there, right?
Yeah, and I don't know how people crap on that. I really don't. To me, it's the greatest recognition in professional wrestling. If you are a WWE Hall of Famer, that you are among the elite in the world. There's no question about it. So, whatever. People can say, whatever they want. But if you're on that list, it is an incredible accomplishment. And I think that's one of the biggest parts of it is the fact that, they think back, I'm sure, to the high school arenas where they started and, making $50 sometimes, maybe 25, maybe nothing, maybe not even gas money. And then you just work and work and work. And like with Hacksaw, you have these great highs and these tremendous lows, and your body is just beat to crap. And then, you get to an elite organization, and regardless what anybody wants to knock it or praise it or whatever, but there's no other. There really nothing else compares than the WWE. And to become a Hall of Famer, it doesn't get any better. And people, whatever, if they want to knock, it doesn't make any sense to me. No. To me, it's a tremendous achievement, and anybody that is among those is the best in the world at their profession.
Well, especially too because like you said, Hacksaw Jim Duggan remembers where he started and where he is. Wrestling fans can have their judgments on whatever they think, but Hacksaw Jim Duggan, you don't know what's in his brain, in his heart, and the hard work he put to get to being even called to say, hey, we'd love you in the Hall of Fame because we think you're, one of the best. Like, that to me is an honor. And so if anyone doesn't like it, that's your opinion. But in reality, he deserved it because of what he accomplished in the wrestling world.
Yeah, that was an easy one.
We should put the 2x4 in next.
Right. However that process is where they decide who they're bringing in. I don't think that the discussion went on too long as far as does he deserve to go in? Yeah.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. It's Hacksaw goddamn Duggan. Of course he does.
That's right.
Jeez Louise. Yeah, but from the hose and the USA chants and the 2x4, like, he's iconic forever. Yes. One of the most notable, most famous, still to this day, Golden Era wrestlers. Not just Golden Era, just a wrestler in general. People love him and still to this day. But what does Hacksaw Jim Duggan mean to you? You worked with him on a podcast. You worked with him in the WWF. What does he mean to you, Mooney?
Well, as we've mentioned many times in this talk we've had today, he's among the best in the industry ever. I think that, and for a number of reasons, not just his skill in the ring. You can call him whatever. He was a brawler, whatever, but he mastered that as a brawler in the ring, but also how as a performer. And one that knew how to play a crowd, whatever. His resilience is unquestioned. What he faced, the adversity along the way, never giving up, but also the fact, the kind of person he is. As I mentioned, like with his family, he is a huge, very, very strong family man, and so proud of his daughters, and has this great marriage with Deborah. They're best friends. So all the way around, and the fact that that I was blessed to meet him and work with him with the WWE early on, and the fact that that he started that podcast with me, and when I knew nothing about how to do this, and we didn't make any money early on, and he hung in there just on faith. Is forever grateful, and I consider him a friend, and really just one of the good guys out there in professional wrestling, and has deserved everything that he's received. Absolutely deserved being in the Hall of Fame, but just all the way around like a great guy. And I hope that his health remains great, because we're all better off when Hacksaw Jim Duggan's on this planet.
Oh yeah. Because everyone still to this day, as I said earlier, when you go to wrestling events, when you go up the escalator, if you're going to a WWE event or a high school gymnasium or wherever you are, doesn't matter the location, you still hear the ho!
Tough guy.
Yeah, tough guy. He is one of the most iconic people in the wrestling world. So again, I am so happy today on the Golden Era podcast with you, Mr. Sean Mooney. We got to talk about Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Remember, folks, 4th of July on July 3rd. Put out milk and cookies for Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Okay? Make sure you do it, kids. All right. I do it every year, and every year I find they're gone. Just poof. I don't know how it's happening, but he deserves it. But thanks again for being here. I'm Seafall. He's Sean Mooney. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Ho!